Hello everybody, and welcome to This Week from City Hall. I'm Alderman Barbara Best, serving the City of New Bern with the 5th Ward, and today I have two guests with me. They will be giving some history on the Pleasant Hill community, families, and church within the Pleasant Hill community. I have here Miss Nancy Allen. She is a retired elementary teacher, served the Craven County school systems for over 30-some years. Beside her, I have Mr. Mark Best, also a retired educator. A lot of you know him through Craven Community College, also serving over 30 years of service. So thank you both for joining us today, and I know that it's a pleasure for me to be here to hear some of this history that I don't even know about myself, and I'm a resident now of the Pleasant Hill community. So I'm not going to prolong this. I'm going to turn it over to you two, and Mr. Best, I'll let you start, and then Miss Nancy, she can join in whenever she feels like it, and let y'all have the floor.
Okay, thank you. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be able to do this and share some of the history of Pleasant Hill community. It's one of the oldest African American communities in Craven County, and it has such a history to it that a lot of people have not acknowledged over the years. They usually talk about the history of the city of New Bern or the 5 Points area, the Dufferfield area, the James City area, but Pleasant Hill plays such a significant role in the community because having it in the hub of the entertainment, it had its own black country club, its own hotel there, and plus there's a lot of history of gentlemen who shared audio and visual history of that community going back into the 1800s, where some of that interview has been documented in the archives at Duke University Library, UNC Chapel Hill, and also the UNC Central. So I'll share that with you in a few moments, and I'll allow Ms. Adam to share some things that she would like to share as an intro for her aspect of Pleasant Hill community.
Thank you, Barbara. It's really a pleasure and privilege to be here. I mostly have history about Pleasant Hill and Zion Church because from the onset of Pleasant Hill, there has been a Pleasant Hill and Zion Church. Okay. Pleasant Hill Church, but first they met under an oak tree. Wow. But we'll talk about that more in a moment. But from its beginning of Pleasant Hill, there has been Pleasant Hill Church. And the church has always played an important part of our community. In later years, in fact, still in the 1800s, the second church for the community is Macedonia. And it's a Baptist church, but the people in the community, you couldn't tell who belonged to what because Pleasant Hill had church on 2nd and 4th, and Macedonia had church on 1st and 3rd. And really, you couldn't tell who belonged to what church because we all behaved as a community should. Exactly.
And I know the church was an instrumental part of the community because that's what the people within the community, that's all they had as a safe haven, as a place of refuge that they could all attend and talk over the business of the community. So Mr. Best, I guess you're going to start out with from the beginning?
Yes, just sharing a little bit about Pleasant Hill community. In the beginning, Pleasant Hill was settled by 5 African American families. There was the Jones family, the Humphrey family, the Dash family, the Dillahunt family, and the Stanley families. Those were the 5 initial families that came to the Pleasant Hill community. And, you know, I had, growing up, there was on my dad, my grandfather was from Pleasant Hill. He has really, his house is the one that's still standing. And I don't know how it's still standing. It's been through all the storms and everything, but it's still standing. But I think that we got to Pleasant Hill through my great-grandfather, Wright Best, who was the father of Isaiah Best, who was my grandfather. My grandfather was obviously a very smart gentleman because he acquired a lot of property. And then my dad, through Stephen Best, through working for his father, was able to gain property himself. And some of that property he was able to share and sell to some of his brothers and sisters who settled there.
What date did that first establish?
I think that started somewhere. My dad was born in a house, so obviously my grandfather had to be in the 1800s when they came into that community.
Okay.
Well, the great-great-grandfather and mother, Eliza and Moses Dillhunt,
Yes.
helped with the Dillhunt part of it. So all of them came about that same time.
Yes.
Okay.
And I started taking note of the history because I think in early 1991 there was a construction that was going to go through Pleasant Hill that would have torn up, and Nancy remember this, we were working on this together, that was going to tear that community up. There was supposed to be a Department of Engineers were looking to put a bypass through there, 17 bypass, and it had about 14 or 15 alternates, and all of them was going to go through the Pleasant Hill community.
Yes, initially there were 17, and Geneva, his sister, Geneva Horn, also helped to work on this. The first were 17 corridors, then they reduced it down to 9. Well, of the 9 corridors, every one of them would have come through Pleasant Hill, and would have taken out Pleasant Hill Church. But at that time, the center that was across what used to be Pleasant Hill School was then a rehabilitation center. All 9 corridors would have taken Pleasant Hill Church, but not one would have touched the rehabilitation center. So needless to say, we raised the uproar. And so they did add another corridor, the 10th corridor, and to our knowledge, this is going to be the one that they're going to take.
Yes. Yeah, that facility at that time was called Craven Evaluation and Training Center.
Right.
And through that history, we found out that because Craven Evaluation and Training Center used to be Pleasant Hill Elementary School, Pleasant Hill had its own elementary school embedded in the community, which the land was donated to the Department of Education by gentlemen from that community. Along this would be used for the community and for educational purposes. And Pleasant Hill was, I think, one of the last black elementary schools in Craven County. I was a part of that. They always had 8th grade graduations. And I was a part of the last 8th grade class to graduate. And I think that was 1969, 1970, when we graduated, and that school was kind of no longer an elementary school in the Board of Education. But even going back further, one of the reasons why Pleasant Hill community was so important because there was farmers. All the family was farmers. And so on the weekends, they would farm. They had cattle, they had hogs, they had chickens, they had tobacco, they had corn, they had soybeans. But a lot of that produce and the meats from the cows and the cattle and the hogs, they were taken to the city on the weekend and sell because most everybody in that area had transportation, either a truck or a mule and a cart or something like that. And they would at least. And I remember riding on a cart with my Uncle Roscoe Jackson going to the city. With him, my dad always pretty much had a truck. And I remember that being on the truck, sometimes we go to church because he had 10 kids. Everybody couldn't fit in the truck. So my sisters would get in the truck with whoever the drivers was, one of my brothers did. The rest of them would get little chairs and sit on the back of the truck and ride on the back of the truck. To church and all that.
Well, Mr. Bass, let me interject here. Was that a dirt road or a brick road that y'all was traveling on with the
it was paved.
Okay.
But that brings some more history because if you go back to Pleasant Hill history, a lot of the homestead was connected to close by the railroad track that runs probably out the highway now, about maybe what you said, Nancy, maybe 1 mile or so or 2 from it. And a lot of those homes, if you going back there to my dad's farm right there at the back, we see some of those old homes behind Pleasant Hill Church. There was a road that went back behind Pleasant Hill Church back there to the railroad track, and a lot of early families had homes by the railroad track before the road was built through Pleasant Hill.
And what was unique about the people that settled in Pleasant Hill, that they all were landowners.
Yes.
They scraped together their monies and they bought the land. And people that were willing to sell to them, the 2 people that were willing to sell, a Mr. Holmes and a Mr. Newman. So to the first settlers.
Yes.
And so this was unique because many free slaves, they became sharecroppers. Then they owned their own land. But Pleasant Hill was unique in that respect, in that they owned their own land.
Yes. And even though they would still work for white farmers and all of that. Some of them didn't have money. Yeah, didn't have money, so they would get things on credit initially. And you know, my dad and grandfather used to talk about stories where they would get things on credit. Some of them couldn't read or write, so they didn't know if they were being cheated or not.
Right.
But they took what they had and used. And one of the interesting things from the interview, because in 1993, when my father Stephen Best, my uncle Hayward Best, Mr. Oliver Humphrey, Mr. William Franklin, and Mr. Lehman Dillon was a part of an interview by a young lady from UNC Chapel Hill, and she came in and wanted them to share their experience through Jim Crow time and also the Depression, and about how the entertainment was in the community at that time. Because Nancy mentioned Pleasant Hill Church in Macedonia, and they talked about whoever had a quarter probably get a date with the prettiest girl, or they can purchase an apple and show that, hey, I got some change on me, and they get a date with the prettiest girl because let them know that they had a little bit of money. They had to walk everywhere to the social club. They talked about the tubs of lemonade, and it's very interesting that the community none of them said in the Depression affected them because they was already poor, but they was already sharing. Right. So that because they was already sharing, nobody really felt the effects because they didn't have money, and each other was helping. If somebody butcher a cow, they share that cow through the community. Somebody butcher a hog or chickens, they share that in the community. So they said that it really didn't affect them because they was already doing and sharing in that community.
And no one went without. If one had, everyone had.
That's what you call village families connecting together.
Yes.
So.
And Pleasant Hill had stores. I think my Aunt Annie Perry, Bess Perry, had a store by the school. She had a little chapel that we would leave the school and sneak over there sometime to get candy or buy cookies and all of that. Mr. John Dillon, I think, had a store with the first gas station out in Pleasant Hill. So folks would go and get their gas from his gas station and all of that, and purchase some food and all that also. So my grandfather had a store in his early ages where he would store soybeans and things like that and meats that people would come out there and purchase, or he would take to town to sell. So very industrious group of individuals. And as Nancy was talking about the alternatives coming to Pleasant Hill, what happened was that even though our parents weren't really educated, they were strong components of education. And so when folks would come through the day and ride through the community, they probably said, well, it's just a group of elderly individuals staying here. But they didn't realize that those individuals sent their children to college to be teachers, engineers, educators, administrators, and all of that. So when they, I think it caught them off guard that this little community where they saw tobacco and corn and a little rural area now had children who had grown up, that they had gained their education. And there was now, because we worked together to combat this. I remember Nancy had a segment. I was getting recording. I was recording the history of the community about grave sites that nobody knew but the property owners, that their grandparents had shared with them about grave sites at a tree, different areas. I didn't know that my great-grandfather was buried up in Stevenson Road until all of this, and my great-great-grandmother. And there's a cemetery of our forefathers, Cabin Branch. It's called Cabin of our forefathers is there. I don't know how they got there, or because it's a little up past the community, but obviously they had purchased land for black individuals at that time to have that cemetery there.
Right. And mentioning that cemetery, that's a cemetery that's now is being kept up by your brother.
Yeah, my brother Steve has taken the initiative to keep it up, and because when I was in college when my grandparents died, and I remember taking my grandfather up there. I never knew until he took the initiative to come out that my great-grandfather and great-great-grandmother were there also, as well as other families. When you go up there, you see the names like Stanley's and even from Nancy's family, those generational individuals. Yes,
what was your maiden name?
Yes. Carmen.
Carmen, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, the Carmens were a little bit later coming to the community, but were there at the end of the 1800s. And speaking of, graves, they're around Pleasant Hill Church. On the sides and in the back, there are graveyards. Unfortunately, have fallen on disrepair from over the years and being grown over.
Okay.
But through oral history, they have said that there are graveyards inside our church and the back of it.
Yeah. And that's so. Once you mentioned oral history, that's so significant about our community. We have oral history documented now about our community, where those gentlemen were talking about their grandparents and their grandparents telling stories of their grandparents and all of that. So this oral history that, as far as I know, there's not many individuals from that age group at that time, or here in Craven County, that there's documented oral history. Some of the history has come after us, but it just so happened when that young lady came down, because I had already started recording part of the history, I went ahead and recorded this. She did an audio recording of the history, and I just had a videotape, and then she mentioned years later, she mentioned in the interview that this was in the archives at Duke, UNC Chapel. It was a partnership, and NC Central. And so I heard about this interview some years later, that they was going around the country providing historical facts from that interview. And then I remember that I think this is the same one that Ad and those other gentlemen had. So I went back and started looking for it. So I found my VHS tape. But I wanted to find out if it was truly in the archives of some of our major universities. So I called up the Duke University Library and gave the gentleman the name that the lady mentioned at that time, and the plight of African American males during Jim Crow time, and he searched their archives and found the audio. So it's actually documented in state history, as well as gentlemen from Craven County being some of the oldest African American property owners in the state of North Carolina. That's really significant. Nancy mentioned earlier that they purchased their land.
So the video contains the 5 gentlemen or family heads that come together and submitted all this information and did the video.
I think Mr. David Jones is included in that.
Yeah, Mr. David Jones. Everybody was there except someone that's representing the Stanley family. I think the other families.
Of the 5.
The 5. I think everyone was there, which was unique because all these gentlemen was up in their 70s and 80s at that time. So they had that wisdom, and I remember.
And that history, which we have lost some of, because we did get to record some of it, and they did pass it on to some of the kids, but kids at first don't really pay that attention. When you get to be older, then you understand the value of it.
Yes.
And so I'm so glad that this part was done, at least what they, that has been preserved. So we've been blessed at that part.
At this point, Mark, have you or Nancy looked into this history being part of the history at North Carolina History Center here in New Bern? Have you spoke with anyone in reference to trying to get this information?
I haven't. I hadn't thought about it.
Well, I did before they moved. For the History Center move, the copy of the audio tape that I got, I took it down to Crown Palace years ago. My understanding is that when they moved to the new complex, it was lost.
Okay.
So I am going to initiate that process again, because especially with the live history, because even though the audio has the voices, this actually shows 2 parts of Pleasant Hill history. First, those gentlemen, like she said, some that's not as Mr. Michael Dillon was in the first talking about his property and his family and cemeteries there. He talked about Pleasant Hill Church and the road and the houses that ran back from the railroad track. some of the homes who were some of the first homes, and some of those homes are still standing. I think the Villa Hunt's home is standing.
Yes.
My grandfather Isaiah Best's home is still standing. I think Willie Best, who was around the curve, his home, and they had two-story structures because they were being fruitful and multiplying.
Okay.
They had large families. Yes, and then there was other families like
Is the Joneses
The
home?
Jones.
yeah, the Jonestown came up after that time, and the area that they called what is how city?
Sugar Hill.
Yeah, how Sugar Hill get its name? You know,
Don't know.
you know, I don't know either.
Must be a lot of sugar.
Yeah, must be a lot of sugar, a lot of sweetness going on there. And then when I was a part of Leadership Craven, we took a tour of Pleasant Hill. This one is in Mark Howell. My dad was the custodian there, and everybody knew everybody. We knew the ladies that worked in the cafeteria. They knew our parents. My dad knew everybody's parents. So if something happened at school, they didn't really have to go to the principal because Dad would correct them, and then he'll tell their parents, and plus he had permission from their parents to correct them at school.
We need that village.
Yes, yes. That was really a village, and I think once they had immigration, some of that closeness lost because I kept one book which I shared earlier that was from, and that should be interesting, that from Pleasant Hill School Library. It was copyrighted, I think, in 1940s. Of course, we always got the last, but we was an African American elementary school. We didn't get up-to-date information. And I noticed when we went to Jasper my freshman year, integrated, there were so many of us that had to catch up because some of the things that they had already had, we did not have.
Right.
We had fun time, we was educated, we were smart, but some of our classmates was left behind, and some of us had to kick into an extra gear just to catch up so we wouldn't be left behind.
Did you feel like you was going through a struggle at that point when you attended Jasper School?
Well, desegregation for our area had just started. I mean, it had started nationwide, but for our community where the children actually went to school together, and that, to your point, it makes a difference too, I think, in community, the neighborhood schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was a little adjustment. It took some adjustment, first of all, but it wasn't a great deal of adjustment, I don't think, on the part of knowing people, because the area was mainly agricultural. I mean, some of the kids, some of us worked on some of the farms
together
that were out in Jasper. So we did know some of the kids, and for the most part, it was a smooth transition. But yeah, you did have to work hard. I mean, you did have to catch up, I guess you would say.
Yes.
Some catching up, and it was good that some people did try to help other people. If you understood something, then you help your neighbor.
Exactly.
Yeah. So and I think that what I miss about neighborhood schooling, because now I taught for 30 years in Vanceboro. Now that was a neighborhood school. The children all came from Vanceboro, but when you bust here and bust there, I mean, we might need the busing, but it's something about a school in your neighborhood.
Yes.
Where you call that parent,
Right.
and the teachers know you and you know them, know the
Exactly.
parent,
That's the instrumental part of it.
Yeah.
So we had to get used to not being in our neighborhood.
Yes. Because we could actually, if the bus left us, we could walk home. I was my home where I was raised was it wasn't even 2 minutes from the school, and plus every evening, because my dad was custodian, all my brothers learned how to clean then, because when other kids would be going home, we stayed and helped my dad. He would have one side of the school, clean up the classroom in the evening, and my brothers, Reginald, Dallas, Steve, and I don't know about Ruben and Kennedy. They was out of school when I was born, just about. But we would stay there in the afternoons. We knew every window that wouldn't lock. And on Sundays, we usually would go out to the school and play softball or football. Some of the kids from the community would just get together and do things. And then we knew everybody because everybody would walk past our house if you were going to Pleasant Hill Church, and which my dad was a member and all of that. So the community was really close. And then we hadn't talked about the entertainment part. Pleasant Hill had its own African-American country club, and I think Dr. Lippman I think he's the one that started that country club out there, if I'm not mistaken.
Maybe, I know,
I think he came a little later.
I don't know.
Did he?
Yes.
I don't know, but I know, is it who was the,
Frazier, Roy Frazier?
I think
not him, I'm saying Frazier, but the motel was by the pharmacist. I cannot call his name at this moment. But he put a motel in Pleasant Hill, which did well
Mr.
for.
Faison.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Faison. I knew it was
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, because he owned the drugstore. He was a black-owned drugstore in 5 Points area.
Yeah.
See, I did not know that as
Yeah.
well, that there was a pharmacy within the Pleasant Hill community.
No, it wasn't in the community. It was in New Bern.
New Bern.
But he built the motel in the Pleasant Hill
Yeah,
community.
and what would happen on weekends, because they had some other places in New Bern, but on Saturdays, on the weekends, they would have actually artists that would come from upstate New York and all that. They would take a bus, they would stay in a hotel, they would go into the club and perform, they would go back to the hotel and sleep, and then during the weekend, the hotel was open, we would go down there and get hamburgers, people from the community sit down there. They had what they call a jukebox in there and all that, and we'd go in there and listen to music. People would sit at the stools at the bar, order hamburgers, hot dogs, and we would just catch up. And then they also had, like, my Aunt Mary had what you call a juke joint, and there was one that Mr. Related to the Beckmans. What's their dad name? They call him, he had one up there. It was 4 times.
Oh,
Four
he was
times.
related to the Webbs.
Yeah, okay, 4 times, but the one across the street, they call him Big Baby. Yeah. They had a little, what they call little juke joints.
This is getting interesting.
Yeah. Even on my home now is on the property of my aunt, and I'm finding bottles, mason jars, and all that, which he had, like, they had pig feet in, they had the boiled eggs and vinegar. They had, it was sort of like a little social thing where people who were close would go to like little juke joints, and everybody would go to the club, but they still had those little spots there in the community.
Well, let me interject here, Mark. I don't know what is the time frame, what time do we have? I don't know if y'all had some more additional history that you wanted to share, because we are on a time schedule here.
22.
Okay.
But I do want to share about the Stanleys. We were talking about the land for Pleasant Hill School was donated. Well, Pleasant Hill Park, that was donated by the Stanley family.
Right.
Yes. And there was individuals from our community that worked very hard. Mrs. Odessa Webb, Dad, Mr. Johnny Jones, different individuals from the community. They always wanted to, years ago they used to have a baseball team, semi-pro baseball team that played, but they had like old cars back there and all of that. So they saw a vision to clear that land and have a park and something for the kids in the community, which is very much a well-used park.
Well, right now, out there in the park, there is a sign that has been put up recognizing the individuals that were responsible for getting the park started. And I do know it was, as you said, Mr. Lehman Dillon was a part of it as well. And I think it was Robert Stanley, and the football player,
George Kuntz.
Right, exactly.
Well, before them, before the park got to the point where it had to be cleaned up again, because years ago they used it to play baseball, and there were traveling baseball teams. And then when they stopped doing that, when I say years, I'm saying 50, 60 years ago. And when they stopped doing that, for some reason they started using it as a dump.
Yes.
And this is why it had to be cleaned.
Okay.
But before it got cleaned this time to where it was park ready, Pleasant Hill's children, our church school, and the other individuals would come out and pick glass, and it started at the front, and
Yes.
it gradually got all the way to the back, glass and the other trash that was thrown out there. And then the next wave came in and got it where it was park ready, but Pleasant Hill Church School took that on as a project.
Oh, well, you know, I don't want to omit anyone. I know Mr. Benjamin Best was part of that as well.
Oh, yes.
So. And also, there was some other individuals that wasn't mentioned at the time that I had the sign made up. So,
According to oral history around our church, there are Yankee and Rebel soldier buried because you know the Dillahunts, when some of their ancestors were in the Civil War, and some of Moses Dillahunt's brothers or family members anyway, 3 of them were killed during that time, but they came on to the area, Elijah and Moses did, and they said about the time, you know, about that time somehow or another, some of the soldiers were buried around Pleasant Hill Church.
now I don't know how true it is, but I think I was talking to some individuals and they were saying some of those graves were still there. The markers
that's
were
what
still
they said.
Okay.
Yeah, because they said it happened about the time when the Confederate soldiers were trying to take Newbern back.
Yeah.
So did the Pleasant Hill church serve as a school at any point in time?
Yes, we did. The early 1920s, Mr. Lehman Dillahunt,
Yes.
and Mark's dad as well, Mr. Stevens, said about 3 years Pleasant Hill Church served as a school.
Yes.
Because it was like the early 1920s too, when Pleasant Hill School was built, not the brick building that's standing today. Well, the wood building is still standing in front of our church, it's just covered with trees.
Right.
But 3 years prior to that, I guess, in the early, 1920s, Pleasant Hill Church served as a school.
Okay.
And I just want to share some stamps that individuals from the community had put on Craven, from different things in Craven County. I know being at the college, most people here don't know that the Literacy Council was started by myself and Ms. Eleanor Hawkins, who used to be at the library. When I came on at college as adult-based education director, we didn't have a Literacy Council. I went to a meeting that encouraged communities to have them, so I went to Ms. Hawkins and we talked, and I asked her would she agreed to have the Literacy Council at the library, because at that time most of them were. And she agreed, and due to some funds I had at the college, I was able to help get the training started with the Lobach tutorial, and that's for individuals. Also, the Barbara School at Craven was one of my pet projects there. Then that school started, and now because being out in the community a lot, was able to, gentlemen were going up to Raleigh and different places. They were paying anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 for training. And then we was able to get that school at Craven, and now the total cost to complete the program is no more than probably about $1,700. And so I there was something, and being at Craven for a number of years to Miss Marion Dillahunt Andrews, whose father's from Pleasant Hill. You know, in 2011, she and I both won state awards from the community college system. She was the teacher of the year. She didn't work at Craven, but she was from another community college, but she's from New Bern and from Pleasant Hill community. Her dad was. I was the staff person of the year. And then we also had the sitting governor at that time, Beverly Perdue, who was the governor from New Bern. So I don't think anybody note that. I don't know if there's been any other time where a sitting governor had 2 people from her county that were state award winners at that time. So there's some things that, and also we had a member that was part of the Globetrotters, Jumping Jackie Jackson. He's from the Stanley family.
Oh, okay.
He played for the Globetrotters in all the days. He's one of the early members of the Globetrotters. He was from that community. Also, my brother Reuben was a part of the 1957 J.T. Barbara State Championship team, and he's currently in the New Bern High School J.T. Barbara Hall of Fame there. So there's a lot of history. My sister Hattie, I understand, was the first black social worker in Pamlico County.
I did not know.
So it's a lot of history. We have an engineer in the Edwin Brown. Is an engineer from Pleasant Hill. He helped us a lot when the DOT with their projects, because his engineering expertise was very helpful in doing it. He brought designs and showed them other routes around that. So it went good. So it has a rich history in community and farming, networking, education, and entertainment.
And then, am I correct for saying this? Didn't you and Miss Nancy work together at some point at Craven Community College? Some kind of programs or?
Yes. Yes, we did.
He hired me as an adult education teacher.
Yeah.
That was
about 9?
Was that
well, it was when I came on at Craven.
9
years. When I came on board at Craven, I was a director of adult-based education, and knowing that Nancy was an educator and all that, I knew she was an excellent educator, not just an educator. I reached out to her. She taught part-time in the program for a number of years. And that was very significant. So it has a lot of history that's overlooked. You hear about African American history in Craven County. You hear about your Dufferfield. You hear about your James City. You hear about your Pembroke community. And it seems like Pleasant Hill is a lost community, but it brought so much to New Bern in itself. So I think that's something that we have to look at. And plus the fact now we have documented history. We have Mr. William Franklin, we call him, I ain't call his nickname, but he wrote a book. He's an author of a book from his years of being in the Air Force. And Colleen Roberts has a copy of that book, which he wrote. So we have an author also from the community.
Okay. So all that we have discussed here today, the history that you share with me and all those that are listening and watching, you have pictures that will also be included within this segment. Sometimes pictures mean more than words when you can see those pictures.
If some of the descendants know exactly where to go, because the old tree where they first met in 1865 for a church, before they built the first wood church, if anyone knows where that is exactly, because I'm sad to say that those that did know have fallen asleep. And I have asked a few people, but they didn't know. So if anyone that happens to see this and know where that is, if they could help us find it.
And I'll go back and re-look at the oral history, because I think one of the gentlemen may have mentioned Mr. Oliver. I think when we met was one of the oldest gentlemen of the community. I remember going back and talking about his parents and great-grandparents. And I took a lot of notes. I'll have to go back and look specifically for that, see if that's up there. But it's such a significant community to have the last black elementary school here in Craven County, to have authors, and these are farmers' children who, and most of our parents, didn't get a chance to complete their high school education because they were working, they was farming, they was trying to provide for their families. But yet there was a closeness, and everybody in the community knew everyone. We had several different sections. We had the Jonestown, we had Sugar Hill, and Pleasant Hill was the main thoroughfare through there. We had the country club, we had our own hotel out there before they even put hotels in other areas. So we was really progressive, and nobody even took note of that.
So you basically, Pleasant Hill was a city within a city.
Yes.
Okay. Well, in conclusion, with some of the information and history that you've shared here today, I would like for you to, Mr. Best, so that our viewers would know that this is history that has been documented.
Yes.
And you said it was documented in Raleigh.
Yeah, it's documented in the audio history of the 5 gentlemen that we mentioned. well, 5 or 6 gentlemen that we mentioned who was in that interview with the young lady from UNC Chapel Hill.
Okay.
I have validated that it is in the archives of
Okay.
the University Library. I have not checked with Chapel Hill or Central, but she said in the interview that it would be because it was a project that all 3 schools were working on at that time. So I do know, so I do know by contacting Duke that it is there with Duke University Library.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both for being a part of this segment today and sharing the history that you have. And thank you, Ms. Allen and Mr. Best. And I want to give a special thanks to Ms. Colleen Roberts. She plays a very vital part in the media communication outlet for us. And also would like to thank each and every one of you that viewed today, and God bless you all. I'm Alderman Barbara Best with Ward City of New Bern, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.